know that I have a lot of things to get off my chest towards you. And I want to know what you think on the matter. So on that note, I think it's time to let that itch breathe. Let this bitch breathe. I want to have a little bit more bass than usual. Jeez. Anyway, so time to let this itch breathe, man. It's been no secret, it's been no surprise. Kobe Bryant has been struggling mightily throughout the 2015-2016 season. And mind you, we're only about roughly 20 games in or so. And sometime during this week, he announced that at the end of the season, he was going to hang it up. He was going to call it quits. He's going to say it was time to call it a career. And at the end of the day, I don't blame him. Kobe Bryant is in his 20th season. He's been playing in the NBA ever since he was 17, going on 18. So basically, this man has aged double the amount of time that someone else would, if they weren't in the profession of professional athletes. So is it a good time for him to retire? Yes. In fact, I feel like he maybe should have retired maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago when he was still relatively on top of his game, averaging 20 to 25 points a game and what have you. I feel like that would have been the best time to go out rather than you just kind of going out when your injuries are catching up to you, kind of like a Steve Nash, for example, like a Dikembe Mutombo, for example, Hakeem Olajuwon. The list goes on and on and on. It's kind of disheartening to see a superstar that you grew up watching just kind of limp his way onto retirement, basically. And I think Kobe is kind of going through that right now, minus a 31-point game that he had against Washington, which was insane. But nonetheless, I feel like Kobe is kind of going through the same motions that any other aging superstar would be going through during their decline, so to speak. Now, there's not much to be said that's already been said about Kobe Bryant. I mean, we're talking 18-time All-Star, league MVP, 5-time champion, 3 of those championships on Shaq's team. Just saying, he's done it. He's done it all. Basically, he has done it all. Me personally, for anyone who knows me, I'm not the biggest fan of Kobe Bryant, but I will give credit to where credit is due. He did make the game very exciting for a lot of people. He was part of reinvigorating, I wouldn't say Showtime, but he helped make the Lakers popular again. He made them relevant again. I don't think the Lakers can ever lose relevance, but in terms of the NBA version of relevance, in terms of wins and losses, postseason appearances, what have you, he did contribute his part in that, nonetheless. So those are some of the good things that I do like about Kobe Bryant. The fact that his will to play the game is almost unmatched. Some of the things I don't like about Kobe, or that I don't fancy about Kobe that much, is his brand of leadership. I feel as though when it comes to his brand of leadership, he doesn't really instill the confidence in the players around him to make them believe that they are better than what they are. I feel like someone like LeBron James, for example, is much better at that. Someone like Jason Kidd was much better at that during his prime. But with Kobe, I feel like that's not his strong suit. I feel as though to instill some sort of motivation in his teammates, he does it by way of fear. And I don't feel as though fear is a good proponent in making your teammates better, because it makes them very uncomfortable and uneasy. And I feel as though Kobe had a knack for doing that. Nonetheless, that still doesn't take away from how great of a player he was, but at the same time, those are a few knocks against him. And I feel as though because of the amount of greatness that he has achieved throughout his career, I feel like some people would gloss over that, especially Lakers management, because I feel as though, and not even me feeling, I think it's almost a fact at this point, that Lakers management has enabled him to make him believe whatever he wants to believe. Now, granted, he's one of the greatest players of all time. No one's taking that away from him. But you can't just coddle him, say that whatever you're doing, keep on doing it, you're doing it right. No, you got to give, even if it's your superstar, especially if it's your superstar, in fact, you got to give your superstar constructive criticism. And I feel as though Phil Jackson was one of, if not probably the only person in that Lakers organization who wasn't an active player, was doing that for him, kind of centering him, being the Zen master that he is. Because let's be honest, if Kobe's relations towards other players were on a much more higher note, then I feel as though he would have been able to play with a lot more, not even just play with a lot more players, but a lot more players would have been more willing to come to LA to play. Now, you're going to say, oh, well, he had Dwight Howard and he had Steve Nash. Well, let's talk about this guys real quick. Steve Nash mainly wanted to come to LA because of the fact that Dwight Howard had already signed on to be a part of the Lakers. But on top of that, he has his family in LA. He has other multimedia ventures that take place in LA, of course, because that is Tinseltown. So that made the decision a lot easier for him. As for Howard, let's be honest, Howard is one of the most indecisive players that you can think of. He got pressured into signing with the Lakers. Really, he was meant to sign with the Brooklyn Nets or even the Dallas Mavericks, maybe even the Houston Rockets. So who knows? But nonetheless, again, Kobe, I feel like if he had worked on that portion of his, I don't want to say game, but just of his demeanor, then a lot more people would have been more invited to play with the Lakers. I mean, you even look at someone as recently as LaMarcus Aldridge, who was quoted as saying he was turned off by, the Lakers wooing session, so to speak, because he didn't like the way Kobe kind of presented the idea of playing alongside him and the Lakers. So that's just another, caveat to throw in there. But overall, despite, some of the negative aspects about Kobe, which I can probably dive into, on another video, I think the fact of the matter remains is that one of the greatest players of all time is set to retire when it's all said and done. He was one of the players who kind of defined the later part of the 90s and the early portion of the 2000s. And he is someone who got better as he aged. And you don't really see that a whole lot. And there's so many highlights to gloss over. The fact that he's the Lakers' all-time leading scorer. The fact that he scored 81 points in a single game against my beloved Toronto Raptors. I know I'm still having flashback nightmares about that. And the fact that despite, him getting older, he was still able to play at a high level to even compete with guys of this generation, like LeBron James, like a Kevin Durant, among others. So I tip my hat to him. He's not my favorite player, but I give respect where respect is due. And is he a top 10 player of all time? I say so. But what do you think? Hit me up on Twitter at DM_cool or cool_radio and let me know what you think. Coming up